In this next chart over here, we are going to look at CEO compensation in the US visualized. Now this chart has been made for a very mainstream audience, and it almost seems like it was designed to trigger outrage in certain people, but we're going to get past that because we are going to evaluate this on its merits as a chart so that you can get some educational value out of it. Forget the outliers. There's only 5 or 6 such outliers by name. Among these S&P 500 companies for 2021, which is what this chart represents, the few that made unusually more than the rest of the pack were a function of both the company being big and that company performing very, very well. You have to have both in order to break away from this pack. So this is not very interesting. Now, obviously, you know the difference between averages and medians, but if not, let me summarize very briefly. The average of each cluster would rise if this highest point got very, very high. If this highest point became twice as much, 3 times as much, the average of the entire group would rise. But the median would not. The median is merely the number at which half of the dots are above that number and half of the dots are below that number, not the extent to which they are above or below. So now, ignoring the top few, you can see that by sector, the typical CEO of an S&P 500 company maybe makes $10, $11, $12 million a year. Now, even within the S&P 500, there are some very big companies and then companies that are at the bottom of that 500 list. So the smallest of the biggest group. And these are the ones that are likely to be lower. There are some that are actually zero even. Some CEO pay packages are zero just because of the specific conditions of that particular CEO's employment or what they agreed to or whatever. Sometimes that's a PR stunt or a gimmick, but sometimes that is entirely based on some forward vesting of compensation. And also remember, their compensation is not just cash. Cash is usually the smaller component, and the rest is some form of equity compensation, either outright stock or stock options or something like that. In a different video, not in this Data University playlist, but in the main channel, I will go into more detail about how executive compensation works. But these dots are the representations of CEO compensation within the S&P 500 and also by sector. Also remember that not all sectors are equal in size. Some sectors are very lucrative, like technology and financial services. Others, like utilities, etc., are not necessarily that lucrative, but sometimes still can have a CEO that is paid a lot. Now, I'm also going to do a video about CEO compensation and whether it is fair or not, but that is going to be a different video in this playlist devoted to the same chart. Because in the United States, one of the political narratives is that CEOs are paid way too much, but that's actually not true, I would argue. They have to take on tremendous risks. They can be sued personally. They have to manage a large organization. They are responsible for the jobs of 40,000, 100,000, 200,000 sometimes people. And they still make the same or less than a movie star or a musician or even a government official that retires from government and then gives speeches and does consultations and does other power brokering, which in fact is the more questionable ethical gray area. But that will be a separate video. This video is about CEO compensation of the S&P 500 companies in the United States and what the median and averages really are, excluding a handful of outliers. Thanks for watching.